Good morning, everyone. I'm here with Mr. McCabe and Mr. Lyons to talk about FSC week, and today's topic is faith in the presence of God. So, what does this mean to you, faith in the presence of God?
Yeah, Connor, thanks for having us on today. So I think faith in the presence of God is something that is tangible to our experience here at LaSalle in our community. That when we think about what God's presence is, and we recall that being in God's presence, we're always and everywhere in God's presence. That means in a classroom, that God is present in each of the members gathered in prayer together, gathered for an activity, a discussion, even a test. Those students might not see it that way. And everything that we do here is through that lens, whether it's a club, a sport, a class, kairos, whatever it may be, that faith in the presence of God is recognizing God's presence in everyone gathered together.
And yeah, if I could add anything to that, I think faith and God's presence has to do, like Mike McCabe says, with regard to your awareness of God. Not necessarily, but not only that though. You know that God is here, He's with you, He's present with you. But there's an element of trusting and believing, even in moments when everything does not look like you might want it to be. I'm quickened to think about the scripture where it says faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And so when we don't know the whole picture, when we can't see everything, when things don't always make sense, that's where our faith comes in, and being aware of God, even in the moments of times that don't really make the most sense for us.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the also important parts about faith in the presence of God is seeing in other people. So one of the challenges, I guess, is trying to see around LaSalle everyone, that faith in everyone and God through everybody. So our next question would be, how do you see faith in the presence of God at LaSalle?
Well, I think, especially as a religion teacher, we obviously teach the faith throughout our 4 years here, but it's through the experiences that I've had as a Lasallian educator in particular. I just came back from Kairos 37-142. Connor and I were there together as retreat leaders, and seeing the growth and the experience of God's friendship in a relatively ordinary experience. Nothing magical happens to see God's presence. It's the trust in our community. It's the trust in the bonds between friends and teachers, counselors, our administration, and certainly when we're gathered in community, particularly prior to COVID-19 and when we were gathered in mass as a community. That is certainly, I think, a really special experience because it's our own almost pseudo parish community that we're gathered as 1,100, 1,150 strong as a community for a common cause.
Yeah, and I see faith in this community here in many people, and basically just the community that's developed here. How you can make small talk with anybody on campus, from the students to the staff to the cleaning personnel to the cooking staff, and still find something that you can relate to with these people. That's faith, that's community, that's trust. And I think that's even God's provision, in that we're in a community where something can be given to and received from every individual in this school, and you don't get that everywhere. And I attribute that to the level of faith-based community we have, and how we utilize those God-like attributes, those Christ-like attributes, to create a stronger bind, all in the name of Christ.
I don't think I could have said it better myself. All right. So then our last question, you guys have a different perspective as teachers. So how have you personally witnessed faith in the presence of God during your time at LaSalle as a teacher?
Oof.
So in terms of maybe a direct encounter of the presence of God in my role as a teacher, right? Like I try to hopefully instill some sense of respect for the fact that God is present in everyone whenever we gather in prayer prior to class. But I think my experience as both a student and an educator on Kairos. Kairos kind of is the pinnacle of our retreat program. It builds off of the experiences that our students have freshman, sophomore, and junior year. And I think in a way, the experience that deepens a student's connection with themselves, with their relationships, and then ultimately with God, and seeing the way that those three elements of a person's life all intersect. That when we know ourselves better, when we know our authentic relationships better, we come to know God in a more definite way. And obviously, that's a lifelong process. But I think it comes at such a crucial moment of our young men's lives when they're thinking about their college decisions, and particularly this year when we all felt so disconnected during COVID-19. You know, we're having this interview over Microsoft Teams instead of in the WXP studio, to have those moments of connection where you're still having just as deep and authentic an experience in spirituality is incredibly meaningful. And to witness that as a teacher deepens my own faith.
Yeah, and if I could piggyback on that, I think I can't agree more that Kairos being the pinnacle of the not just the students level of growth and their in the faith, but the faculty. Like I went, my last one was the last one I went on was my first Kairos, and it really just changed my entire mind about all things with my walk with Christ, and for the better, and deepened it. And taking that into consideration with my role now as a teacher, and particularly within language, where do I see faith now in that regard? Well, it's getting to the aspect of, well, how do you create lessons that not only help the students learn the language, but you connect the faith base, or connect the work of Christ in the lesson or in the classroom. And what I found is that a lot of times it stems in the relationships that we create with our students. It's not necessarily about the lesson you're trying to teach. I mean, even in that, there's an element of faith, because you don't know how well they're going to receive the lesson you're going to take. You're teaching. You might plan it really well, and you might think that it's going to go really well, and even that's faith, right? Because you don't even know how it would come out. But beyond that, on a superficial level, I think seeing that in the classroom is talking to the students, what's going on in their lives, getting past maybe that quiz that they didn't do so well on, and getting to the heart of their issues, or what's happening in their life, or their personal lives, or they didn't get on a particular team, and then you come up with some sort of recommendation for them. I mean, that's how I see faith lived out, because it's pushing the barriers of, getting beyond what's considered normal school, what's considered right teaching, and just getting to the heart of what the needs are of your students. And so as a teacher, I see that played out more and more as what the students really need, and I'm grateful to actually be a part of that transition.
All right, thank you guys for sharing your perspective on that. So that wraps up the interview for today. I just wanted to thank Mr. Lyons and Mr. McCabe one more time for joining us. All right.
No problem.
Thanks, Connor.
Thank you for having me, Connor.
Of course.